I'll be more than happy to do it.
You're on YouTube now.
Yes, I am. I'm on YouTube, and I'm going to go back to the share screen for the article. Okay, share URL. Yeah. Anyways, I'll put the YouTube later on Facebook. Okay. Bingo. Okay, so everyone sees it. So first of all, I think there's a great humility. We begin with the problem that it's really hard to predict things.
Yeah, he's quoting Lewis.
Yeah, I have his first book on Islam. It's really good. Okay.
Yeah, I read a lot of his stuff.
Yeah. I mean, he predicted a lot of things, actually.
He was, very smart historian. He spoke so many languages. Wow.
Okay, so it would seem that Judah is not much of a leader, right? He does a lot of things that seem to be bad things, right?
Right. So he's using this as a.
How come Yehuda ends up as the leader? So what does Rabbi Sachs say? Come on, you guys read it. What does Rabbi Sachs say?
Well, obviously, Yehuda shows his leadership once he finds himself in front of Yosef. No doubt about that.
Okay, so what's the nature of this leadership?
The nature of this leadership is that he's not afraid to stand in front of him one-on-one and explain his case.
Okay, but I want to look here. By the way, I believe Bart mentioned this yesterday in Shul. Judah is the first person to achieve perfect repentance, Tshuva Gemura. You see where I have it, the share screen. You find by the sages when you find yourself in a situation where it's likely you'll be tempted to repeat an earlier sin, but you're able to resist because you are now a changed person. Many years before, Judah was responsible for Joseph being sold as a slave.
Correct.
Now, with a similar prospect of leaving Benjamin as a slave, he has a very different response. He says, let me stay as a slave and let my brother go free. This is perfect repentance. He's willing to become a slave himself, coming back. By the way, do you know that Bernard Lewis was Jewish?
Who?
Bernard Lewis, the most famous historian of Islam.
Say the name again.
Bernard Lewis, who we quoted at the beginning. He was Jewish.
Bernard Lewis, sure. Yeah.
He was a Yid.
And how? He spoke every Mideastern language that there is.
Yeah. Okay.
Arabic and Turkish and Persian and oh my God. It was brilliant.
So this is perfect repentance because he's willing to be a slave and let Rachel's son Benjamin go free. And the Torah has already hinted at the change in Yehuda's character in an earlier chapter. Having cued his daughter Tamar, being compared and forbidden sexually, confronted by her with evidence he himself was the father trial, and his response to immediately, she's more righteous than I. This is the first time in the Torah we see a character admit he was wrong. If Yehuda was the first penitent, it was Tamar, mother of Peretz, and King David was descendant, ultimately responsible. And King David does the same thing. When Natan HaNavi confronts him about the story with Bathsheba, what does he say? I've sinned. He admits it. So, in other words, what we have in Yehuda is very interesting. And I think it needs elaboration. That we see in Yehuda and David, people with very strong impulses and very strong negative impulses who learn from their mistakes and transform themselves. And that's in essence what you need to be a leader. Leaders make mistakes. That's an occupational hazard of the role. He brings Chamberlain and Churchill,
Well, that's where I had a problem with Rabbi Sachs here. He's using this chapter to show the negative side of the story. He does
Okay, so
not.
what's the
He
positive
does not-
side? Go ahead, Joe.
the
Shoot.
positive end of the story is, well, it's true. The low story of Yehuda is when he says out of the blue, sell him. Because Reuven himself, even though he shows such great leadership in the beginning, all of a sudden, when Joseph they took his advice and they put him in the hole, he disappears. The Torah says he comes back. Oh, he can't believe it. Joseph is gone. By then, he was sold on the recommendation of Judah. That's his low. But the chapter that was introduced there with him in Tamar is to show the beginning, clearing his name. Yehuda
Wait a
comes up
second.
now as
Isn't
leader.
this exact 1 minute? Joe, isn't that exactly what Rabbi Sachs is saying? He's saying that that in the story of Tamar we see his transformation. Why, what's the stira?
Remote Alaska. Hey, what's the population? About 50 to 52 people. And
What's the stira? What's the contradiction?
No, because he introduces this chapter as a big negative about Yehuda, that he has 3 sons, that 2 are dead, the one he doesn't want to give him. In other words, all negative. But I see the chapter deliberately put in there to clear Yehuda's name, show his leadership, that he really leads, and he continues from then on to be the leader of the tribes, especially when faced with Joseph and the rest of the history, all the way to the present.
Reuven was the guy that didn't want to kill Yosef.
Right.
did
He
not
begins
want
the
to kill
process
him.
of saving him, but doesn't finish. That's what Joe.
Yeah, he disappears. He trusts his brothers that if he was a leader, he would have watched that hall with Joseph in it till everything, the middle of the night, he would have taken him out and took him to his father. But he disappears.
It wasn't clear to me, and I don't know if it's clear to anybody. Who is Judah supposed to be the brother that said to kill Joseph?
No, it's
sell him.
the other brothers. The assumption is it has to be Shimon and Levi. Yeah, are the ones who say to kill him. It's Reuven says let's not kill him, and his goal is to save him later. But he fails.
Shimon and Levi.
He says let's not kill him, but let's sell him.
But
Which ironically is really God's plan originally.
Who?
God's plan is for Joseph to be sold. But he doesn't know that, so he's to blame. And that's why
who did you say is to blame?
Judah's to blame, because even though it was God's plan, he didn't know that. He chose to do a wrong thing.
Well, why do you say it's Judah's to blame?
Well, he's the one who said to sell him. In other words, God wanted Joseph to go to Egypt.
Shimon and Levi wanted to kill him.
According to Rashi,
sell him.
When it says a man said to his brother, let's kill him, that's Shimon and Levi. Because Shimon and Levi are described as a man and his brother when they go slay the people of Shechem. They were the hotheads.
Exactly. That's the only reason Rashi is probably picking on these 2. They already have a reputation.
They have a record.
Exactly.
Right. But let's talk about this idea. So, do you remember when I told you that Benjamin is considered the one son of Jacob who never sinned in his whole life, one of the people who died only because God decreed death upon people because of the story with the snake? But Benjamin wasn't the leader. Joseph and Judah were, and they both made errors. In other words, it's sort of impossible to be a leader and be perfect, because you have to make choices. You're a human being, you're not God, and therefore you're going to make mistakes.
Are you talking about historical Benjamin or Benjamin the son?
I'm talking about Binyamin in the Torah, who the rabbis say about him that he's one of the 4 people who never sinned.
Okay, because later on, Benjamin as a tribe is far
No,
from
I'm not
being
talking about the tribe. I'm talking about the person, Binyamin, son
exactly.
of Jacob.
That was my question.
Well, when we see this Teshuvah Geruma von Yehuda, it's, to me, I relate it to something like the Torah wants to show us that a leader doesn't have to be a superhero. It always chooses and shows us somebody who has impulses and drives, but who can overcome it, so we can relate it better to this kind of leadership, because it's really hard to relate to a leader who is perfect, who is a saint, who is a superhero. I think,
Well, that's the strength, by the way, Natalie's of the whole Bible.
The whole
yes,
Tanakh,
You tell the story through. You make your point through a story, not through a philosophical treatise.
mm-hmm.
Not only that, look even at Yeshayahu, even the prophets who are super holy and super lofty. What's the first thing that happens to Yeshayahu, the prophet Isaiah? Anyone remember?
No.
What does he say? He says, I am impure of lips. I'm in the midst of a nation of impure mouth. And what happens? An angel grabs a fiery coal from the altar and places it on his mouth and burns his mouth, because only God has the right to criticize the Jewish people.
Well, we have this perfect example way back to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu got in trouble when he started in publicly criticizing the Jewish people. That's his biggest sin.
Okay.
And he repeats it later on in the last book, in Dvarim.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
That's
but
where, as a matter of fact, it's interesting that you mentioned the hot coal that burns his lips. We have that same story with Moshe Rabbeinu as a baby, right?
Right, but that's a medrash, but this is explicitly in the text.
But it's coal, and that's why he started for the rest of his life.
Yeah. Anyways, so okay, so there's one other aspect. One other aspect of this is the Rabbi Soloveitchik's point. Shaul and David both sin, right? And both say, I have sinned. What's the difference between them? So Rabbi Soloveitchik says the difference is, I have it up here, that David confessed immediately. Saul made excuses before admitting his sin. So in the spirit of Joe Singer, I want to say that even though I am as but dust at the feet of such a great scholar, I want to argue. I want to say, what's the big difference between Shaul and David? So Saul fails to wipe out all the Amalekites. He leaves Agag alive. He takes the best of the animals to bring his offerings. This is my bar mitzvah haftorah. And what does he say? Hello, Shemoah mizavach tov. It is better to listen to God than all the sacrifices. I don't need your cows. I need your obedience, right? But what David's sin with Bathsheba was a personal failing of his own evil inclination. It was an individual sin, a bad one, but individual sin. What Shaul failed to do was carry out a command as the leader of the people. David failed as an individual who was a leader who should have been better. Saul failed in the very essence of his leadership. And at that point, he became driven away from the kingship. So I want to say that when we say leaders makes mistakes and so on, I would say that a mistake is one thing. But when someone gives into their doubts, gives into the dark side, gives into their essentially evil inclination, it's a big difference if it's a personal failing or when one fails to rise to the task of a leader. If you're told to do something as a leader and fail to rise to that, then you're no longer worthy of being a leader.
Well,
Where you fail as an individual person, that doesn't mean that a flawed person still can't lead. So I think that's a very important distinction. And I would
Rabbi,
say, 1 minute, and I want to say that apropos of what Joe said, I want to say this is also true with Ruvain and Yehuda. Ruvain was the eldest; he should have been the leader, but he failed to carry through his job of saving Yosef. He failed to carry through what he should have done as a leader. And that's why he's no longer the leader. Joseph and Judah and Levi ultimately all share the leadership. But Yehuda, even though he only partially saves Joseph, nevertheless, Yehuda, for all his flaws, he acts. His leadership works. He gets them not to kill Joseph. And that's an important distinction, that as if it were, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay, not okay, but you can fail as an individual and still be a leader. But where God gives you a specific command and you fail in following that command that relates to your job as a leader, whether you're Ruvain or Shaul, that's it. Goodbye. That there's no tolerance.
But the biggest distinction really is what you already mentioned, that King David admits on the spot when he sees.
That's Rabbi Soloveitchik's point. As I say, I think there's another thing here, but I like Rabbi Soloveitchik's point.
I arrived at that conclusion. Okay, I don't want to brag.
No, I'm saying no. It's a very good point.
But Shlomo Amelech is more of a modern politician. First, he tries to get away with as much as he can, and then at the end, he's caught red-handed and he can't do anything. Look what's going on in Israel today with Bibi. If Bibi had the leadership talents of King David, and he would have said, "I'm sorry, I did sin in this," the whole country would have been with him. And now it's all bli Bibi, in Bibi. A real political disaster in Israel going on right now.
Nebuch. I mean, it's like it's become a monthly thing in Israel. You have Rosh Chodesh and you have an election.
And you have Mark Twain. And you have Mark Twain, who I always quote, that said, once you become a politician, you're not fit for honest work.
Is anyone here familiar with Ambrose Bierce?
Or what?
Ambrose Bierce.
Bierce.
B-I-E. No. He wrote a book called The Devil's Dictionary.
Oh, no,
it's amazing. He wrote other books too. He wrote like some Civil War books, but he was a tremendous cynic. And he says, well, the definition of a political party are a group of people whose hands are so deeply stuck in each other's pockets that they can only rob other people. Yeah.
The other point that I would like to mention, since we are still talking about Vayigash, Yosef, and Yehuda, is I see the beginning of our troubles that don't end till the 10 tribes completely disappear. Is the,
so go ahead.
The problem between Yehuda and Yosef, between the assimilistic part of the Jewish people, which ended up being 10 out of the 12 tribes were assimilated. They completely disappeared too on top of it, but they were idol worshippers. They built their own temple. They brought idols in. They were not Jewish. Yehuda was the only tribe that remained remained true to his beliefs and to his name. And we are thank God, we are the children of Yehuda, not of Yosef.
Very, 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 very interesting. Though again, we are told in the Gemara that, and it's hinted in the book of Yirmiyahu, that Yirmiyahu brought back many members of the 12 tribes.
That's true. I imagine that not all the 12 tribes disappeared. I imagine that some of the farmers and all probably were left and joined Yehuda. That's true. I agree. Yes.
Okay, so anyone have any other comments they want to make on Rabbi Sachs's thing? I'm gonna give it 3 weeks till we're gonna do Rabbi Sachs for next Sunday and the Sunday after that. And by the third Sunday, everyone should have the book. I'm gonna send out Monday some links, to look for the book. There are numerous places on eBay and Amazon, numerous sellers who have it. I know it's a very small group today, but are those present interested in doing Rabbi Sachs's book? I mean, if you want to understand the essence of how, not Rabbi Sachs, Rabbi Soloveitchik, if you understand the essence of how Rabbi Soloveitchik saw, orthodoxy and Judaism, as if it were, in the modern world, you really need to read this book.
Well, reading it is one thing. First of all,
no, we're going to read it and discuss it. We're going to study it.
Yes.
It needs study. It's
So,
attainable, it's accessible, guys, but it's dense, and we need to learn it together.
It's not an easy book to read.
Okay, so but as you know, the one thing I can bring to the table is the one thing I can bring to the table is I've read it about a half a dozen times already.
Okay, so you are the guy.
No, I want to say something else. That this book, I've been. 1 second now. I just want to say I've been reading this book since I'm 18. Okay, I read it every few years, maybe more than 6 times by now, because I'm an old man already.
So you are 100 years in advance from us.
And every time I read it, I see new things. It's just an amazing. I think of all his works, I think this is the most and the smallest package. So we've done Rabbi Sachs. Rabbi Sachs is deeply influenced by Rabbi Soloveitchik. I think it's time to move on to Rabbi Soloveitchik. What do you guys think?
Yes, I agree with you.
Interesting.
As a matter of fact, I probably
We could
have
also
the book.
watch some videos. It's also interesting to watch some videos and then discuss being
Well, we can try that too. By the way, I may send out, there is a YouTube of Rabbi Sachs giving the main arguments at a TED Talk of his book Morality. So maybe the next few weeks we can do a YouTube, but then people have to watch it. We can't watch it while we learn. People have to watch it before. But maybe like the last anyway. So we have at least two more weeks of Rabbi Sachs, maybe 3, depending on how quickly the books come. Okay.
Is this Soloveitchik's book you're reading or Sachs's book?
No, Soloveitchik's.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of what Rabbi Sachs is a wonderful communicator, but a lot of what he says is built on Rabbi Soloveitchik. Basically, if you look at him, I see him deeply influenced by Rabbi Soloveitchik, to some extent by Rabbi Steinsaltz, and by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the last Lubavitcher Rebbe. Those are his big influences. So I think Rabbi Lamb, who was rabbi here, wrote some amazing stuff, but he was very much influenced by Rabbi Soloveitchik. So we should take a look.
And all of them were
himself wrote.
And all of them were very much influenced by the Rambam.
The Rambam, and you know who else? Who else?
Kant.
Shimshon Raphael Hirsch.
Hirsch maybe, but Kant too.
Yeah, no. Well, Hirsch was supposedly influenced by Kant.
And so were this group of Soloveitchik and Yeshayahu Leibovich and
but
bunch of them.
but that's, by the way, I want to say, since we have some time, I want to say, this is where Rabbi Soloveitchik Dafka moves away from Kant. Kant has this idea, of a moral imperative, right? So you're not allowed to lie even to save your life. Halakha doesn't have these absolutes. Halakha is the will of God, and the will of God says you should lie to save your life. In other words, Kant believes that his reductionist approach, can ultimately lead you to the ultimate truth. Soloveitchik argues there's no ultimate truth greater than God's will, which smashes through all logical premises, right? His big point is the justification of halacha as halacha itself, even if the reason for it no longer exists.
Well,
So,
that's the Rambam. We read
and by the way, you know who else takes the approach?
right?
Actually, no. The Rambam holds there's a reason for every law. Rabbi Soloveitchik isn't so sure. And
No, but
by
he
the
wrote.
way, Yeshaya Leibovitz, whom some of you may have heard of, also argues that the essence of Judaism is not any particular philosophical approach, but the actual halacha.
I know.
Leibovitz was very, very strong about halacha, irrespective of whether it's biblical or rabbinic and so on.
Lishma.
Yeah, by
He was
him the
big on
nishma.
Lishma.
Yeah. So look, at the risk of being branded a heretic, we may even do some stuff from Leibovitz. I don't know what's translated into English though. Is there anything of his translated into English?
Into English, yeah, I imagine.
I mean, I read it all in Hebrew, so.
Yeah, most that I have of him, and I have quite a few of his books, are all in Hebrew. One of his best is when 250, he picked 250 questions that people sent
you
to
lent
him.
that to me. Yes, that's good stuff. Okay, so we have a program for the coming week. So if I may send out a YouTube. If I send out a YouTube, you guys actually have to watch it.
That's good.
Yeah, and then I'll make notes that I'll put up on the thing. Okay. By the way, someone asked once about astrology. So my daughter just wrote a paper for Touro College on the approach of different medieval Jewish philosophers to astrology. Maybe I'll send it to all of you if she gives me permission. Very interesting stuff.
Were there some positive? Were there some Jews that...
You know who was? You know who was one of the biggest supporters of astrology as being a real science? You'll never guess.
I probably won't.
Avraham ibn Ezra.
Avraham ibn Ezra. Really?
Yep. Big time. By the way, we are going to do a session. We are going to do Thursday night. We're going to do a big thing on dreams, starting from the Talmud.
So, yeah. Rabbi, I think nowadays it's been really hard for people all over the world to distinguish when a leader has done something which is bad, but it can be forgiven, and when a leader or an influencer does something that is bad, but it cannot be forgiven because...
Okay, so that's actually a good point, Natalie. And I would say that based on what we read from Rabbi Sachs and Rabbi Soloveitchik, and what I think I see from the texts, if we look at Yehuda, at Yosef, at Ruvain, at Shaul, at David, we look at this whole arc of basically 500 years. Here's what we see. Number one, whether it's a personal or a collect or a leadership failing, you have to admit that you did wrong. You have to, when a leader presents themselves as perfect, right? All the dictators presented themselves as perfect.
Yeah.
If you present yourself as, and by the way, the press, he was a very good politician. and an inspiring leader. But Kennedy, JFK was presented by the press, as a perfect person, and he wasn't. And he made some huge mistakes in leadership, including getting us
Because
stuck
they
in Vietnam.
tend to sell a superhero image.
Right? Yes, and we ended up with Vietnam. And my point is, and my point being that a leader has to admit they're wrong if they do wrong, and number two, this is more for the Jewish leader. You can't, if you directly disobey something God told you with regards to leadership, so then you're not worthy of being a leader. Because it's one thing, Hashem gave us 613 mitzvot, and we have an evil inclination like David, and we mess up. Okay. But we're not okay, but you deal with it. You do tshuva. But whereas a leader, God gives you a job and you fail, so then you're not worthy of being a leader. Because one should never allow their self-doubts or their evil inclination or let the people push them around not to do what God says. But number three, Rabbi Soloveitchik points out that you need to, when you know you've done wrong, you have to acknowledge it right away. When you choose admitting you've done wrong, right? So look at all these politicians who get in trouble. First, they say it never happened. Then they say it wasn't me. Finally, when they're stuck in a corner, they clap Hashamnu. And that's not acceptable. A leader is someone who, even their personal failings, they say, you know what? I have to be an example. And how do you be an example if you fail? How do you be an example if you fail? You be an example if you fail. You know how? When you admit you do wrong and set an example that, yes, we're human beings, we're weak, we fail, but we turn to the people we wronged and apologize, and we turn to God and ask for his forgiveness.
And not only apologizing, and also change your behavior and your actions as well.
It says
because only saying I'm sorry, it doesn't change anything.
No, right. It says, like little kids in kindergarten, nursery school, they'll poke the other one and say sorry and then poke them again. That doesn't work. So, but there's an interesting thing. It says in Tehillim, David HaMelech says, V'libi chalal b'kirbi. My heart is empty within me. And the Gemara says that he emptied out his evil inclination. He killed it by fasting. I'm not saying we should all go around fasting, but the point is he took it to heart and he cried and he fasted. He genuinely rejected his behavior and genuinely abhorred who he had become and genuinely transformed it.
Mm-hmm.
It has to become from the inside out. External statements are not worth anything. It has to come from the inside out.
There's this big one talent that David had. He didn't wait till he's in so much in trouble, then he cannot go back. He admitted it right then and there.
Yeah, that's what Rabbi Soloveitchik says. Yes, exactly.
And that's what with Bibi now, he's so deep and he's got these three big books against him, and he denies everything now for years. He's stuck.
In order to manipulate, when you don't say it on the spot, when you don't confess early, it means that you are manipulating everything.
Yeah, exactly.
How can I be sure you're being sincere? Yeah, because you missed the time. You should have apologized it. And I can see from your actions and your attitudes that you are honest, that you've changed it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that problem. He's very talented, like Bibi. He's very talented. Look what he did with the corona. Israel is coming out of the corona, going to be the first one in the world. They signed contracts with the biggest companies. They're getting them by the millions. And around the clock, you can get a shot in Israel.
You know what? I mean, look, I have to say.
And he's so good looking as well. So everything is manipulative.
But look,
the looks.
Look, I don't want to. I don't feel. I'm glad you guys know. I don't feel qualified to make pronouncements about Israeli politics. In general, both in America and Israel, you know my policy. I don't talk about politics per se. I will talk about issues, and I will talk about religious aspects of things that some may consider politics in Israel. For example, the right of the Jewish people to the whole land of Israel, I see that as a religious matter. But so I don't want to get into that. I do want to say that in Pirkei Avot, yeah, we discuss several types of people, and sometimes we say Yotza Scharo Behefsedo, that the whatever advantages this type of person has, we lose the advantage in the disadvantage. And sometimes you say the other way around, Yotzo Hefsedo B'Scharo, that whatever the shortcomings of this individual, we lose it in the, but the problem is that the real problem is that whichever person we look at, whether it's a leader in your own family, a leader in a community, a leader of a whole country, the point is you have to be convinced that the person is making choices on the basis of what's good for the country. You could be David HaMelech, you could be flawed, but David HaMelech's choices as a leader tended to be what he understood to be the best for the people of Israel. And so without any political comment, I would simply say that in the event we have a situation where a leader is seen as making choices because of their needs and benefits, rather than the needs and benefits of the community, it's time for that person to go. And without any names or any parties, I think if we learn anything from Rabbi Sachs and Rabbi Soloveitchik on the Parsha, that the moment the leader is not being open and honest, it's okay to say, look, I need this for me. But the moment you start confusing the me with the needs of the people, then you have a problem. Let me give you an example. It says, and Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, transgressed this. What does it say in the Torah? What are the three things a king is not allowed to have? Too many what? No, who remembers? Yo, Joe. Lo
Yes.
Yarbelo. What are the three things a king isn't allowed to have?
Say that again. I wasn't listening. Sorry.
Well, see, he's honest. He admits right away.
Yeah, he was not there.
I didn't. I admit I didn't listen.
That's why we love Joe.
No, Joe, do you know the three things?
Okay, I didn't hear. I'm sorry.
No, tell me. What are the three things?
What things?
Oh, hi, you said that. Yeah, too many wives. A king isn't allowed to have too many wives, too much money, and too many horses.
Yes.
So Maimonides wants to know what's too many. So too many wives is more than 18. And
yeah, I heard that.
Before you left, Shlomo had 1,000. Turkish sultans had 3,000. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
18 is a small number by Middle Eastern standards.
Yeah.
So as Rabbi Twersky once said, when growing up, he said in Milwaukee, there was an old guy in his shul who was married for 60, 70 years. And he used to tell his wife, honey, I wouldn't sell you for $1 million and I wouldn't buy another one of you for a nickel.
Yeah, it's all related to human impulses or drive, isn't it? Sex, money, and moving.
Power.
Yeah, power. Yeah.
Right. So Maimonides wants to know
that can move you. Yeah.
Right. So Maimonides wants to know what's too many wives? 18. What's too much money? He says any more than he needs for his army and to keep the infrastructure of the country functioning. In other words, the king is not supposed to accumulate money for himself. It's his job to tax and spend what the people need. The moment it's for himself and not for the people, yeah, he needs a fancy palace because he has to impress the dignitaries. But the moment it's for himself and not for the people, that is where you become a failed leader. And too many horses, he says, whatever he needs for transportation and for his cavalry. but it becomes, look how many horses I have. So you want to know what's the definition of a failed leader when they do things in their leadership for their own aggrandizement and not for the sake of the country.
Yeah, but people can't see this right now. I don't understand why, but they are so blind that they can't see this right now from their leaders. It happens here in Brazil, and we have a crazy guy as a president, and nobody can see that he's crazy and he's so self-centered. He's not there for the country and for the people. So nowadays it's really hard for people to have this awareness.
No, I hear you.
Somebody's got a radio on.
בעצם אני נותן לך אור ירוק, כאילו זה כבר על דעתו. בואו, גנץ הצביע לפני כמה ימים בעד ההצבעה הזו, היום רצו להפוך אותה.
I think Yosef was listening to the
Israeli radio in Hebrew. We are in Israel right now.
There we are. Okay. So what I want to say is that I think a very important point with all this, that, you know, in the end, we're also leaders of ourselves. And every person is like a little kingdom, it says in Kohelet and Ecclesiastes, okay? And the reason why, so Natalie wants to know why people are blind, why they don't see this failings in self. So you know why? Because I think we live in a society, and Rabbi Sachs talks about this, that celebrates self-centeredness, looking out for number one, grabbing what you can grab. If we ourselves lead our own lives in a self-centered way, how do we expect our leaders to be different? In the end, our leaders reflect us. And when we improve, our leaders improve.
It's like mirroring. Yes, and they are not self-aware of themselves. Right. And so it's just like mirroring their own ego and shallow values.
And what is Yehuda's strength? What is Judah's strength? Apropos of what Rabbi Sachs says, he turns and he says of Tamar, Tzadka mimeni, she is more righteous than me. She had a good reason for what she did with me. I did not. That took a lot of self-awareness, because him and Tamar, they were both participated in this. But Tamar had a good reason he didn't. He was able to be self-aware and to analyze his motives and admit his failings. And so, yes, self-awareness. All the writers on Musar, on Jewish ethics, write that one of the most important things is the ability to make an honest cheshbon hanefesh, an honest self-evaluation. And Yehuda did this, and that's why he is the ancestor of all the leaders up to the Mashiach.
Yeah.
Because he was able to make an honest self-evaluation.
And being self-aware, it doesn't mean that the person is self-centered, because once you do that, it must be clear for you that you cannot build up yourself without relating to others. So it's very important, this interaction with others, because we are sociable human beings, right?
Yeah, I think that.
So we need others to build up ourselves, and we are a collective awareness, big awareness.
Yeah, that's something I believe that Reb Sadia Gaon says, Adam hu medini, that the human being is by nature a social creature.
Social creatures.
But at the same time, to be honest with others, you first have to be honest with yourself. So at any rate, I wish everyone a good week. Thank you for this very enlightening and nice conversation. And I think Rabbi Sachs got us thinking, which is a good thing. We may do a YouTube in a week or two, and in about 3 weeks, we'll start with the book. I am going to send out, God willing, Monday, some links so you can see different places to get the book. Just do some searching on eBay and Amazon and find the cheapest possible one, because you don't need a nice, perfectly new book to read. However, I must warn you that you will not find it in Goodwill or Savers.
What's the name of the book?
It's called Halachic Man by Rabbi Soloveitchik. I'll send out the ISBN
Ah.
information tomorrow.
Halachic man,
Halachic man.
Halachic man by Soloveitchik.
Yeah, by Rabbi Yosef Dov.
Joseph.
Okay,
Joseph
everyone, have a good week. And 7 p.m. tonight, we shall, God willing, see you on Thingamajig. We're gonna try a Ma'ariv again. We'll see if anyone shows up.
What
We'll
is
just
that?
not do Ma'ariv anymore Wednesday night, but we'll see what happens. Okay, everyone?
7 p.m. is Ma'ariv, right?
Yeah, we're gonna see if we try to show up for Ma'ariv, guys. Okay, and get
On
all the best
on the Zoom.
on the Zoom only. Yeah, on the Zoom.
Natalie,
Okay.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you a question that just dawned on me that you are not in Long Meadow now, or not even in Springfield.
No, she's in the middle of the summer. She's at the
Yeah.
summer solstice.
You
Right.
are in Rio?
No,
Are you
I am in another city. I am in Villa Velha, which is like 4 hours by plane from Rio.
So
But
Brazil
it's
is a very big
hotter
country.
than in Rio.
so you are in Brazil.
Yes, I am in Brazil.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Geez, it never dawned on me. I thought that you were in Long Meadow.
No.
What are
She
the,
is the furthest flung member of our community.
what are the politics like in Brazil?
They have a mini. Well, she
Really
can tell
bad.
you.
If you think
Really
ours
bad
is
right now.
if you think ours is bad, theirs is even worse.
Ours is worse. I can tell you.
I don't know if you remember, but we had a real great scientist, and that goes back at least 30 years, that I remember he predicted that in 20 years, that's then, Brazil is going to pass United States as the biggest economy in the world.
Well, that didn't work out quite
And
that
it
way.
didn't work like that.
But
Let's mess it up.
but
Bye,
you know,
Robert.
but you know something, Natalie. You're in Vila Velha.
Yes, Villa
You know that-
Velha.
Do you know that it's one of the oldest cities in Brazil?
Yes, I do.
It was founded more than 150 years before any city in North America, 1535.
Oh, these I didn't know. I
Wait
know
a
it's
minute.
very old.
Wait
It's
a
very
minute.
old
Can-
and it's small, it's smaller than Rio.
Yeah, but you know that originally a lot of Jews came to Brazil because the Portuguese government didn't enforce the Inquisition in Brazil. Then they brought the Inquisition to Brazil, and
And then
most
they
of
had to move. They moved
Yeah.
to New Mexico.
And actually, some of them, when they came here and they spoke Ladino, when they heard Portuguese, they thought everybody was talking Ladino. They said, "Oh, this is so great! Do you talk Ladino?"
Well, wait,
but
hold on.
it's not. It was Portuguese.
Wait a second. So,
Yeah.
Portuguese is more similar to Ladino than Spanish is?
I don't know because I don't know Ladino. So, but probably yes, because for example, in the dialect spoken in Sicilia, in Italy, is so similar to Portuguese, more similar than Italian itself.
Very interesting.
Yeah, because it's really different from Italian, Sicilian dialect. And Argentina is pretty near here, right? But there was so many Nazis in Argentina, especially in Bariloche. They all went there. So, but but the Jewish community in Argentina is very strong.
Yeah, but
Culturally,
particularly Buenos
everything.
Aires. But I have a friend, by the way, who's the rabbi in Cordoba, which is a town that most people never heard of, but has a big Jewish community.
Cordoba? Oh my God.
Cordoba, Argentina, not Cordoba, Spain.
Cordoba.
Oh, Cordoba, Argentina.
Anyways,
Cordoba.
But I don't understand what you mentioned in in North America, that is the oldest city?
No, it's the oldest city in North America is St. Augustine in Florida, founded, I believe, 1585. So the city that Natalie lives in is 50 years older than that.
Oh my God. So it's all, no, I thought it was Santa Fe was the oldest.
No, Santa Fe was founded
In
much later.
1600 something.
Yeah, but this is St. Augustine is 1585.
Wow.
Beautiful city. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful city.
Oh, you've been there, Bob?
Yeah,
You've
yeah.
been there?
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
That's where the fountain of youth is, isn't it?
Do you?
Well, they
do
thought
you
it was
need
there.
to have- Do you need to have faith to go there?
You gotta have faith to go anywhere.
That's
it.
Santa Fe.
Well, I always tell,
Faith.
oh, it's 1565. I'm sorry, not 1585, 1565, says Rabbi.
Wow.
And Vila Velha means old village.
Villa
Villa Vella.
Old village.
Villa what?
Vila Velha, old village.
Veja.
Anyways, at
Velha.
any rate, have a good day, everyone. Thanks for the geography and history lesson. And we'll see you all, God willing, for Myriff. Take care.